Good morning or very, very early afternoon to everyone. It's great to see you all in the new year. We're going to get started just shortly. We're starting up the live stream on YouTube. So we have all of this on our YouTube page if you ever want to look at it again. So just give us a few Zoom minutes to get everyone in and we'll get started. All right. Because we have a limited time and we have some really great information from Shannon, I will get this started. Just a request, if everyone can stay on mute, there will be time for a Q&A later where folks can come off mute. You can always put questions in the chat and we will have some time to answer those later. For those who I haven't met before, my name is Kristen Whitney Daniels. I'm the Associate Director at the U.S. Federation of the Sisters of St. Joseph, and we really thank you for being here at our Dear Neighbor series. And as we start everything, and specifically our Dear Neighbor series, we start with our opening prayer, which is our consensus statement. Stimulated by the Holy Spirit of love and receptive to the Spirit's inspirations, we move always towards profound love of God and love of neighbor without distinction, from whom we do not separate ourselves, and for whom, in the following of Christ, we work in order to achieve unity of neighbor with neighbor and neighbor with God. In humility, the spirit of the incarnate word. In sincere charity, the manner of St. Joseph whose name we bear. In an Ignatian Salesian climate, that is, with an orientation towards excellence, tempered by gentleness, peace, joy. And we also love to share a maxim. This maxim comes actually from Shannon Green's request. It's Maxim 84. Never go ahead of grace by an imprudent eagerness, but quietly await its movements. And when it comes to you, go along with it with great gentleness, humility, fidelity, and courage. And that's the Marcia Allen translation. And we always love to include the high school students translation because they're always so fun. Put on the brakes and wait for grace. Gonna stop sharing the screen so I can see everyone. We are so excited to kick off our new year with Shannon Green. And Shannon is the first representative of our expanded membership on the Leadership Council, which functions as the leadership board essentially for the Sisters of St. Joseph's Federation, U.S. Federation. Shannon is the Senior Director of the CSJ Institute at Mount St. Mary's University in Los Angeles, and she's also a member of the Family of Joseph with the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange. She's going to share a little bit more about her experience, what it's meant to be on the council, how she got on the council, and we'll have time for questions. So Shannon, I'm going to kick it off to you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. It's really, really good to be here. Thank you all so much for taking the time out today and for your engagement and connection to the Federation. As Kristen mentioned, I am Shannon Green and I serve as the Senior Director of the CSJ Institute at Mount St. Mary's in Los Angeles. I've been in this role for 10 years and it essentially serves as the mission integration unit for the university. And I want to share mostly about, my experience on the Leadership Council, but in doing so, I realized it really makes sense for me to share a little bit of my own journey and how I came to this role that I'm in and how it has led me to my engagement with the Federation and to value my experience as being a part of the Leadership Council. So I hope you'll humor me a little bit of a personal sharing and then be delighted to take your questions and conversation at the end. I have served on the Leadership Council of the Federation since 2024. And as Kristen mentioned, I am the first to occupy the seat that's designated for expanded membership. So I keep coming back to my own ministry formation as I've thought about this because it is what has led me to this role and to this engagement with the Federation. And I share this with you not because I'm unique. In fact, I share it because there are many of us working in CSSJ organizations, leading these institutions who make up what we now name as expanded membership. So I identify as a lay ecclesial minister. I have a Master of Divinity degree, and I've been in full-time ministry for more than 25 years. Most of my ministry career has been with religiously sponsored institutions, which is interesting given that I did not go to Catholic schools. I was that CCD and Newman Center kid. But one of my first professional ministry positions was as the executive director of Dominican Volunteers USA, which at that time in the year 2000 was a new entity, a 501(c)(3) founded and sponsored by 25 communities of Dominican sisters, as well as 2 provinces of friars. And as the inaugural director, part of my role was to lead us in becoming a truly collaborative ministry. So I spent 3 years traveling around the United States, visiting these communities of Dominican women. I slept in a lot of mother houses. I visited their various ministry sites, and I helped sisters discern if they were ready to receive a volunteer, because in that program, our volunteers lived in community with the sisters. And much of my work felt like evangelization. Because then, just as now, even more so now, communities had much more on their minds than hosting a volunteer, or finding the funds to support a volunteer, or finding sisters to serve on the board. But in this experience, I was immersed in the Dominican family. I attended the Dominican Leadership Conference, high school and college preaching conferences. I supported the Dominican youth movement. And all of this experience shaped my conviction that the charisms of religious communities are desperately needed in our church and our world, and that there are many of us who are ready to receive these charisms, particularly young adults. In the Dominican world, we would share that your body is your pulpit, that you can live your vocation by the 4 pillars of Dominican life. And to see the recognition on the faces of these young people was truly empowering. So, yes, I realize that we are not Dominicans. So, a little bit about how I came to the family of Joseph. I first encountered in a deeper way the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange around 2015. And I see a few of you on this today. They were launching their Family of Joseph initiative, which is an invitation to their partners to deeper relationship. I was new to Southern California, and my husband, as many of you know, is on the faculty at Loyola Marymount. And the Sisters of Orange are sponsors of Loyola Marymount. Not everybody realizes that. So it was through his connections with Sister Maria Lai and some other sisters of Orange that we were invited to become part of the family of Joseph. So we had this beautiful launch day in the summer, and Sister Carol Zinn was the keynote speaker. And as she broke open the charism in our times for us, I really had a moment. I knew I received it. I knew I had found the charism community in which I belonged. Don't tell the Dominicans, but the preaching charism was not always a great fit for me. But to love the dear neighbor without distinction and to serve others with a love that seeks unity and healing, that was it for me. And I knew I wanted to align my ministerial life with the CSSJ world. So, as the Spirit does, I was given the opportunity to be the inaugural director of the CSJ Institute in 2016. and charged with forming our Mount community in mission, charism, and spirituality of our founders. Because of my previous experience, I immediately began to seek out various CSSJ entities. I became connected with the Association of Colleges of Sisters of St. Joseph, and those relationships really supported me in my earliest days and remain vital to my work. I connected with our high schools, both in the province of LA, but also across the United States, joining them in their meetings, their annual gatherings. I was rooting myself in the Mount community and certainly in this LA province of Carondelet Sisters, but I remain a part of the family of Joseph. I was searching for and creating my CSSJ ecosystem. That year, 2016, the Federation event welcomed Partners in Ministry for the first time. This was in Orlando, 2016, and those of you who were there will remember what a special event that was. There was a lot of energy, and I felt very welcome. At the same time, it was apparent that not all of the experiences were for me. I understood that. This was not new to me, but I did feel called to be there, called to be in relationship, and I felt the good faith of the sisters in welcoming us to those tables. So, this notion of collaborative ministry is not groundbreaking to any of us. But what I have come to name is that my model of collaboration desires to move more easily across boundaries and structures, particularly those of defined membership. And since I do not feel called to be an associate or an agrégé, I have found my ecosystem among multiple congregations, higher education, high schools, the service agencies and healthcare organizations founded by our sisters, as well as our new relationship with St. Joseph's Educational Ministries. St. Joseph workers, there are so many expressions of our charism. I belong to the charism and to the community that seeks to live it out and share it with the world. In terms of a larger organization that can hold these many relationships and ways of being, the Federation continues to discern and expand its reach, seeking that greater inclusion and unity. So, what does this all have to do with being on the council? I have been welcomed to the table that continues to discern the path forward for the Federation. It hasn't always been easy for me or for everyone else. I'm usually the only non-vowed member in very deep and serious conversations about issues of religious life, formation, the future. I'm also present during leadership assemblies, during which very vulnerable and difficult discussions occur, along with very hopeful and energized conversations. So while my presence and participation has had its moments of confusion and tension, I have found this experience to be one where my input is not only valued, but desired. And I am incredibly grateful to my council members, my companions, and to the staff who encourage my presence and my input. So I am convinced, and I believe my companions on the council are also convinced, that more voices are necessary to continue to discern the path of the Federation. That as an ecclesial lay minister seeking out to live my vocation in the ministry of the CSSJ mission, charism, and spirituality, that I too can be an instrument as we seek to move the Federation into the future. And so, as opportunities open up to serve on the council, I urge us all to consider where the Spirit is moving us collectively, where the charism is flourishing, and to continue to bring those voices to the table. I don't have to tell all of you how the world is in desperate need of the gift that we have all received. And the Federation is not the only vehicle of movement, of course, an expression of this unifying love. In fact, I have learned that the Federation cannot do it all, but I am grateful that there is a willingness to grow, to expand, to include the new voices, to try to hold us all together in a loving space so that we can realize all that the Spirit is calling us to, so that all may be one. I'd like to close my sharing with a poem that's a favorite of ours at Mount St. Mary's that was written by Sister Alberta Kamick as she reflected on the expansion of the mission of the sisters to the West. And it's called A New Harvest. They had learned the total emptying of self to be filled with God, these black-robed women who carried their baskets to the poor, bathed the sick, gently tended the wounded, and lovingly gathered together the orphans in their outstretched arms. Uncommon women for an uncommon time. They were not formed by formal rule to be the congregation of the great love of God. The world still needs their kind of loving. With a new harvest, the chaff is scattered by the wind. Through different pathways, women will come with new voices, taking up the singing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for that sharing. I think it's a gift to hear people's stories of how they got here where they are. I think I'm looking at the list of participants, and I know so many folks who have really interesting stories, how we got to this charism, how we continue to share it in mission and ministry and life. So I think thank you for blessing us with sharing your story. I learn something new every time. I want to encourage folks, if you have questions, to please put them in the chat or use the raise hand option. I'm going to get things started because I was writing down my own questions for you while we were going. But I absolutely want to make space for the other folks on this call. We have almost 50 people on here. So this is an exciting topic. Your presence, I think, is super exciting because I started in 2018. And that was pretty much just after the Federation expanded their terms, their vision, their mission to include partners, our associates, our agreges, our St. Joseph worker community, our family of Joseph, everybody. And so now it's about almost 8 years later, though you started in 2024, we're really seeing it move into fruition, to seeing the movement of the Spirit happen. What you've also been you also joined, I want to make note, as this expanded membership at the very beginning. So Shannon's been a part of it. You've seen this in all its many iterations as it's changed. What have been some of the changes you've seen over that time?
That's a great question. I think, it's true. Coming to know and be a part of the CSSJ family, the family of Joseph in 2016, 2015, it was kind of right at that opening up. And so I really do feel like the Spirit led me to all of us and us to me, I guess. It feels very mutual in that sense. Um, I just recall at that 2016 gathering, which those of you who are out will remember, it was a transformative experience and it was very energizing. But it was also, I can't remember who our speaker was, but she was somebody who, sociology of women's religious life. And I had a private conversation with her afterwards, and she just said, "You have to be patient with us. We're still figuring this out." Because, there were moments where even some of the speakers and would say, "Now, sisters, now, sisters." And I thought, oh gosh, this is the first time you've invited us all here. And, many of us are not sisters. And I'm not insulted by that, but it's just, it takes practice, right, of our language and our awareness, and to keep broadening and keep broadening the vision. So, I mean, the fact that I'm even sitting at the table during some of these conversations, and to be honest, I have tried to excuse myself from some of the conversations that I thought, this is not my place. I don't have anything to say to this. And I have been told no, that my voice, even though I am not avowed religious, that these questions that people want to hear, what I have to say or what my contributions may be. So imagine that's quite a distance to traverse in, 8 or 9 years to being sort of a welcomed. It's like the process of welcoming, right? We welcome you. yes, we want you to be one of us, you are one of us, but we don't know entirely what that means. To then be at the center where decisions are being made, and discernment is happening, and people and my voice is valued in it's true, it's really humbling, and it shows a lot, I think, about the courage of the leadership who has shepherded in this process. That's why that maxim speaks so much to me. It's like the grace is there. We have to pay attention to the spirit, but we often want to go at our own pace. So I'm the one who wants to get ahead of grace. There may be others who maybe aren't ready to catch up with grace. But we're all hanging in, and that it's the faithfulness and good faith is really the best way I could describe my experience with the individuals and the collective of the Federation. Um, Another change I think I've seen just briefly is I'm deeply invested in sponsored ministries. And I think in some corners there has been this sense that sisters are letting go of sponsored ministries. And there is a letting go that's happening. And at the same time, I'm trying to I want to speak for it's a new way of connecting and relating. It's not a full letting go. It's a new empowerment of sponsored ministries. We're not interested in being let go to go somewhere else. We want to continue to be an expression of the charism in a way that leads, in a way that empowers, in a way that witnesses. So I appreciate being able to represent a piece of that voice at the Federation table.
Thanks so much, Shannon. And I love having these reflective conversations sometimes because being in the everyday work of this, sometimes it feels so slow, like so Catholic slow of watching things change. But having these reflective conversations, hearing you talk about, the 2016 event, I think where I first maybe met you, and fast forwarding our 10 years, a lot has really shifted when we think about it. There's still work to do, but
Yeah.
wow, I really admire, we have our first expanded member on the Leadership Council.
I also want to point out that the event that we just had, the 375th, the diversity of leadership in the input was remarkable. And I was very proud that my own leader, Anne McElhaney Johnson, was one of the speakers. And that was, it's happening on all sides. She was not as familiar with the Federation. Again, I share my story to show how kind of a natural connection this is for me. But for many of our leaders in our sponsored institutions, we also have that work to do to raise the awareness of the Federation and say, you're part of this bigger family, you're part of this bigger community, you're part of this charism family. Please come and learn, share with us and learn from each other as well.
We have a great question from Andrea, and along the lines of something I was going to ask you. We have 50 people on this call and a lot of partners in mission. So I'm thinking maybe some of them might want to know more ways to get involved. And we can't have, unfortunately, all 50 people on the Leadership Council. That would be our assembly. It's a whole different ballgame with that. How do you recommend that members get involved, either with input to you in the wider Federation, what that could look like? And then Andrea also had another question. From your experience in Federation leadership, what do you see in the future?
Mm.
Kind of together.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm happy to engage with anyone who wants to have a more one-on-one conversation about what it's like to serve in this capacity and how I can represent broadly. I would be very open and happy to do that. So, Kristen, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just put my email in the chat. I would really appreciate that. Um, I will say Kristen has been a big part of my engagement with the Federation. I actually met you right after your St. Joseph Worker experience in LA, when I was getting settled in at the Mount, and then was so happy when you became, a staff member with this tasks to expand membership. So I was part of some of those earlier conversations with you. Um, and I encourage us all to think about the Federation as as a way of being a home for all of us, or a holder of this ecosystem of the CSSJ world in the US and Canada. And to not just be recipients of the Federation's, but you know, great programs, although that is certainly a way to engage. But I remember, you know, earlier days, kind of before, or maybe it was during COVID, I was able to actually offer some online programming with the Federation. We offered some of our films that we've done with of our sisters. So, you know, this is what I want to encourage those of us who are leading and working in formation or other kinds of mission integration. We actually can offer something to the broader Federation community. So I think there's some coordination that's coming, you know, down the road. We are having a lot of conversations about what the Federation's role is in formation for all members, all kinds of members. And those conversations we're really in the thick of it. So we don't have specifics yet, but it's a really fruitful conversation that Andrea is also a part of. And I am really excited to see where that will go in terms of what can the Federation offer, but how can the Federation also serve as the hub where we can all come together and all of us in leadership in these different capacities can share out to other members. So I don't know, we don't know what the model of that is going to be, but it seems like we are discerning collectively how we can work together more closely in offering formation experiences for anybody in the CSSJ family. Stay tuned.
Lots happening. Shannon is a part of a vocation formation uh, committee is a
Working
strong
group.
word. Working group is a better word for it. Of some people throughout the Federation acknowledging that there is no way that we can perfectly encapsulate all of the formation that is happening on the ground. But it's initial conversation to start thinking, sort of like Charlene's question of, you know, as some congregations contemplate coming to completion, how do we envision the future for the family of Joseph on a local level and on a Federation level? And I think some of our work is starting to answer that, or at least contemplating that question. Like Shannon said, Andrea is also representing the associates on that group. And I've seen the associates group go from serving associate leaders at the Federation level to now opening that scope even wider. So things have been changing and will continue to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, you know, I think the question about local and global is a tough one. We are a large country. Like I learned that when I was doing Dominican Volunteers, to run a national charism organization is really challenging. And those of us who are in the West can be kind of geographically separate from much of the CSSJ world community in the United States. And that's again where I really challenge us to be creative, and where I'm very clear that the Carondelettes and Oranges, for example, have some very different cultural expressions of their religious lives, and yet I love moving with and between those communities. So I think there's a lot we can do in terms of relationship building on the ground. Again, just encouraging us to move through, not tear down, but move through those boundaries of membership that separate us oftentimes. So we're very much in this organic movement phase, I think. But it gives me great hope for how the charism will continue, not just in individuals, but collectively, and as some kind of, you know, organizationally in some ways into the future. So please, again, keep paying attention, stay tuned. And I see, you know, there's one question about representation. I don't know if Kristen or Deirdre, you want to take that one really quickly. I see Deirdre there.
I
Yeah.
can start us off. Hello, everybody. This is Sister Deirdre Griffin, our Executive Director here at the Federation office in New York right now. The shift that Kristen mentioned envisions a total number of 3 folks from this expanded membership aspect of our collective whole serving on the Leadership Council. So as we move forward, there will be 2 additional seats at that table for folks from the expanded membership, which would include agrégés and others. So please stay tuned, and we will keep you all informed as all of that progresses. And please keep us in your prayers. We know we are in this holy creative evolution time, and it is very exciting. And your input and company and support really matter to us. So if anyone has any questions or thoughts that they'd like to share with me, also, I'm happy to hear from you.
I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that as facilitator, I lost a little bit of track of time, and we were having such a good conversation that we're already at the half-hour mark.
Yes, we are.
But to say the agrégés are absolutely a part of the future. We've had agrégés on our lifelong transformation committee. And when that time comes, when we open up the other 2 seats, it doesn't matter necessarily what group, what you're associated to. We welcome everybody who is connected with our charism. I will say that for Shannon's past position, or Shannon's position that she is in right now, when we had the open application, it was open to folks who are paid expanded members, which you can find out more on our website. But just to say that that is an offering as part of that. And I do want to flip the question back to everyone else. What do you want to see as our expanded members? What relationship can we have between Shannon's role and our wider group that we can potentially facilitate? So Sister Deirdre put her email in the chat. Shannon's email is in the chat. I know many of you, so you have my email. We're all listening and very excited to talk about this more. So thank you, Sister Deirdre. Thank you, Shannon. We are so thankful for your leadership, your presence, and your grace during this time.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Happy to continue the conversation.
I'm sure we'll be inviting you into more conversations soon. You're never far from the phone.
That's right.
So I will put up the last screen of our PowerPoint really quick for folks. So you'll see that we are already far into planning our Dear Neighbor series for the rest of the year. February 18th is so exciting. It's a day that everybody looks forward to in the Federation every year. It's when we have our Federation novices. And they'll have a presentation. Folks will be able to hear directly from them about their experience. And I think there will be time for questions too. So definitely tune in. That'll be February 18th. And then we will have a St. Joseph's Feast Day celebration March 18th. And it's looking like April, we might have a UN update after the Commission on the Status of Women. We'll keep you updated on what's happening. But thank you folks for being here, for joining us. We're always delighted to be in community with you, and take care.